Very nice, Emily. Thank you. Welcome. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Lynchburg. We are glad you are here. Whoever you are, whatever your beliefs, whatever your age, and whomever you love, you are welcome here as we work together for justice, compassion, and peace. We acknowledge with humility that our buildings sit on Monacan land. My name is Kim Sinna, and I've been a participant in this congregation since 2004. If you are with us for the first time, we are glad you chose to be here this morning to participate in the service for this congregation we love. If you would like to receive our monthly newsletter and Friday email updates, please fill out the virtual visitor card found on our website, uulynchburg.org, under Sunday services, or here in the sanctuary, there's a yellow card in the seat back pockets that you can fill out and just place them in the offering basket, and we'll be sure to make a note of it. Next Sunday at 1 p.m. here in the sanctuary, we are invited to hear Jenna Ung, a student who studies with Emily at Randolph College. Jenna plans to pursue piano performance in college as a double major. Please join us to support Jenna as she embarks on her college auditions. She will play works by J.S. Bach, Ludwig van Beethoven, Friedrich Chopin, and Sergei Prokofiev. Oh, I love Prokofiev. So enjoy social time, then join us in the sanctuary a few minutes before 1.
That's next week.
Next week, sorry, next week.
I didn't put that in.
Sorry, I should have. This Thursday at 9:30, Thanksgiving Day, the annual Lynchburg Service of Unity will be held at Peakland Baptist Church. Courtney Sinna will again represent our congregation in the service. This service has been held for over 50 years. Everyone is invited. You know, it's one of our favorite Thanksgiving Day traditions to go to this service. So if you haven't done it and you're able to, please attend. You won't regret it. And now I invite us to release our worries about the world and our own lives as we enter into the service by taking some slow, calming breaths.
Let's take a moment to roomies. Let's greet our Zoomies online. Good morning, everybody. Zoomies, say good morning to our roomies. It's wonderful to be together through time and space. And now I invite us to light the chalice of our faith as we share these words. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, O Spirit of life. I invite us to rise in body or spirit as we share together hymn 317, We Are Not Our Own. I'd like to invite our young people and anybody who feels especially young at heart this morning to join Courtney and me up here. Hi. Oh, I have another, let's see. Good morning. That other piece of paper. So today we're going to talk about one of my favorite people from history. Okay, here we are. So this is about somebody who lived like, gosh, almost 200 years ago, and his name was Theodore. And when he was about 4 or 5, he was like walking out in the fields around where he lived in Massachusetts. And how many of y'all like to walk outside and just have a stick and sort of hit the grass? Yeah, me too. So he was just walking around, swishing his stick through the grass. And then he came upon a creek that was like bubbling and running, and the sun was shining. Yes, it was wonderful. And he saw out in the middle of the creek a turtle sunning in the sun. Huh? Yeah, there's a little turtle. Yeah. Well, Theodore was sort of young at that point, and he had seen a lot of boys who were older than he was, like going around, and they would throw sticks at animals or try to hit small creatures, and he'd seen them hit turtles. And he raised his stick because he was smaller and he thought he'd do what the big kids were doing, right? And he raised his stick to hit the turtle, and all of a sudden he sort of heard this voice and felt in his heart that was the wrong thing to do. Why should he hit this innocent little creature? What? It's okay. Yeah. Well, I'm guessing maybe you were thinking about saying that he didn't want to hit it because that would be really unkind. We talk a lot about kindness, don't we? And he realized that whatever he was feeling in his heart had stopped him from doing that. So he went on his way home, and when he got home, he started talking to his mother about what had happened and what he felt. He said, it was like something just told me that I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't hit that little turtle who wasn't bothering anybody. And his mother said, that's very important that you felt that and that you listened to it, because that's the voice of your conscience that lives inside of you. And that's the compass of your moral life. Do you know what a compass is? A compass is, okay, tell us what it is.
It's like something that tells you the direction.
That's exactly right.
It's like a mini watch.
It does look like a mini watch, and you're right. It always points to the north so you can find your direction.
Or it can point to south, east, or west.
Yes, it can. So the compass, his moral compass inside his heart and mind, was telling him what was wrong and what was right. So his mother said, wherever you go and whatever you do, listen to what your conscience is telling you, and it will never lead you astray. And so all of Theodore Parker's life, he remembered that, and it influenced him throughout his life. And it all started with him respecting the life of that little turtle. So I hear you have some fun things.
I do. I have some friends here who might help us remember to listen to that small voice inside of us and help us remember how we're all connected to nature and why it's important to be kind. And so maybe you guys can help me take care of these little guys.
And then the other green ones.
So these turtles are reminders of who we can be as long as we're happy and listening to our inner voice. And I want to remind each of you of one time when we all listened to our inner voice of conscience when the hurricane came through North Carolina. And remember, we had 10 big buckets that we put supplies in, and I know that some of y'all helped. And I'm not as good as Courtney is about finding things on the internet, but I wanted to show y'all these two pictures. Our buckets that we put together to help people who were way back in the woods, they went on a mule train.
Wow.
And it might have been this very mule train because I'm not really quite sure. But see, the mules here have these big packs on that carried things like medicine and cleaning supplies and all sorts of things. Sometimes they even carried a teddy bear or two for kids who lost their homes. And here's a picture of the mule train going where cars and jeeps and other motorized vehicles couldn't go. So all of the buckets that y'all helped us with have gone to places way back in the mountains in North Carolina where people really needed what we did, what we put together. So thank you all for letting your consciences speak and knowing that that was a kind and important thing to have happen. So thank you for being with us today, Courtney.
Yes. All right, so we're going to head upstairs and learn about how telling the truth can help us repair the damage that comes when someone tells a lie. So we're going to be learning all about the importance of truth telling today. We've got some fun games planned. So are we ready to go upstairs? Yeah. All right, let's go.
You want to go with your brother? This morning, we take an offering of our gifts for the work of this community, both within this building and in the larger community of which we are a part. So thank you. mission to share in the midst of our community the joy of life. We hold up today the wonder, mystery, and beauty of life, of the natural world, recognizing how important it is to stay connected with beauty, love, hope, joy during times when our hearts are broken over the suffering that we see in the world. We hold up today those who are suffering in mind, body, or spirit. May they find healing and wholeness. We also hold up our questions about the work that is ours to do in the world. Acts and words that can bring hope and healing to those who are less fortunate than we are, those who need to know that there are people around them who care. This we ask in the name of all that is sacred. Amen. Come on up. So of all the transcendentalist thinkers, Theodore Parker is my favorite. Not just the charming true story of what happened to him when he was younger, but just his commitment to social justice. The first story I heard about Parker spoke to his commitment to the abolition of slavery. He was and is a role model for living one's values in the world. So while we explore Theodore Parker today, it's important to remember also, and I preached about this a few weeks ago, the transcendentalists were not only abolitionists, but they also influenced philosophical thinkers in India. And one was the father of Rabindranath Tagore, the Nobel Prize winner. And Kim is kind enough to read from our hymnal a writing by Rabindranath Tagore that really, I think, reflects transcendentalist values in our 7 principles. So thank you.
I've learned to answer to Courtney.
Sorry. She answers to Kim.
We're interchangeable. The peace of autumn. Today, the peace of autumn pervades the world. In the radiant noon, silent and motionless, the wide stillness rests like a tired bird. Spreading over the deserted fields to all horizons, its wings of golden green. Today, the thin thread of the river flows without song, leaving no mark in its sandy banks. The many distant villages bask in the sun with eyes closed in idle and languid slumber. In the stillness, I hear in every blade of grass, in every speck of dust, in every part of my own body, in the invisible and visible worlds. In the planets, the sun, the stars, the joyous dance of the atoms through endless time.
Thank you. So one thing I love about Theodore Parker is he was a person and a theologian who pushed the bounds of Christian thought in his day. Now remember, this was the mid-1800s. The theology he preached was controversial, and eventually he was deemed to have beliefs that were outside the Christian doctrine and theology. That sounds sort of familiar for some of us, doesn't it? In response, he preached one of the 3 most influential Unitarian sermons called A Discourse on the Transient and Permanent in Christianity. In doing so, he made a clean break with Orthodox Christian theology. In his famous sermon, he argued that the Christian beliefs that are the essence of Jesus's teachings are permanent, while the dogma, traditions, and other forms of theology created by humans was not permanent, but transient, changing periodically throughout history. Parker believed in the immediacy of God and saw the church as a communion. Now, in our day, we would call it community, church as community. He saw Jesus as the supreme expression of God. Ultimately, Parker rejected all miracles and revelation and saw the Bible as full of contradictions and mistakes. I'm sure that did not preach well in traditional churches. And really, this was similar to what Thomas Jefferson did when he edited the New Testament to get rid of all the miracles and printed what we know as the Jefferson Bible. Parker retained a strong faith in God, but affirmed that people experience God intuitively and personally, and that they should center their religious beliefs on their individual experience. In this, I think we can hear the beginning of our UU principles, which came about decades after Parker died. So our young people's story this morning focused on Parker's attunement to his conscience that he found at a very early age. And that commitment continued throughout his life. His personal, intuitive experience of the sacred, which some people call God, was the focusing belief that directed his actions. He said, "Never violate the sacredness of your individual self-respect. Be true to your own mind and conscience, your heart and your soul. So only can you be true to God." And I would say to self. That's the way you stay true to oneself. The stirrings of his conscience led him throughout his life. Sorry, I'm having a little trouble here. So as I was thinking about Parker, I realized that his spiritual journey is very similar to the similar journey that many of us have. Parker was at times bereft, that those around him rejected or shunned him because he didn't believe like traditional Christians. But no matter how hurt he was, he chose to stay true to his inner moral compass, his conscience. As I thought about this, I suddenly realized that Theodore Parker really was much as we are. He had to deconstruct his religious beliefs in order to find a deeper and new understanding of faith and spirituality. The dogma of his day did not resonate with his mind or heart. He had to remain true to his inner compass. And while he held on to his evolving spiritual views, like many of us, the process of leaving behind his old beliefs and integrating more meaningful beliefs was painful for him. He struggled with feelings of rejection and sometimes feelings of depression. But he held firm to the beliefs that emerged from his intuition and insights. Breaking with tradition, he was the first person to pray to Mother, Father, God, and this was in the mid-1800s. This realization that Parker was deconstructing his religious beliefs was like a big aha moment for me. I was like driving around, because of course I'm always driving around, and it's like, oh, he's like so much like many of us. I've studied different religious conflicts over beliefs that have occurred for millennia, but it finally hit me that deconstructing one's inherited beliefs or dominant beliefs is how humanity evolves. A lot of you might have figured this out before me. Sometimes I'm slow, having things shift my thinking. I had been looking at religious conflict as events in history more than an evolution of the heart and conscience. This is incredibly, I have to tell y'all, this is incredibly powerful for me to finally understand. Religious deconstruction is part of evolution. Each of us is contributing to the evolution of the human spirit when we break out of spiritual teachings that are restrictive. I often explain to people when they ask me about my move from United Methodism to Unitarian Universalism as the reality that I needed a bigger vessel to hold my faith. Our chalice is a vessel that can hold the whole human family and its beliefs. That's what I needed. By 1845, as Parker evolved, he began to shift from a focus on transcendentalism and challenging the bounds of Unitarian theology to a focus on the national divisions and chaos over slavery and its challenges to democracy. In Boston, he led a movement to combat the Fugitive Slave Act. This act required law enforcement and citizens of all states, both free states and slave states, to assist in recovering fugitive slaves. Parker called the law a hateful statute of kidnappers and helped organize open resistance to that law. He and his followers formed the Boston Vigilance Committee, which refused to assist with the recovery of fugitive slaves and helped hide them. For example, they smuggled away Ellen and William Craft when Georgia's slave catchers came to Boston to arrest them. Due to such efforts from 1950 to the onset of the American Civil War in 1861, only twice were slaves captured in Boston and transported back to the South. And on both occasions, Bostonians combated the actions with mass protests. Of course, the story that impressed me from the first time that I heard about Theodore Parker was the story about how he would bring his guns to church and he'd put them on top of the pulpit. And that was to protect any people in his congregations who were escaped slaves, so that if a slave bounty hunter came in to the church service to take somebody out, he was prepared to do whatever was necessary to save the people in his congregation. Of course, he was, indicted for his actions. He even was the person who held William and Evelyn Craft. He hid them in his home. But even though he was indicted for his actions, he was never convicted. Theodore Parker's writings were very influential on both Abraham Lincoln and Martin Luther King Jr. One of the greatest metaphors from the civil rights movement originated with Parker, who wrote, "I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can define it by my conscience. And from what I see, I'm sure that it bends towards justice." So today we've inherited the stirring of the conscience to do our part to bend the arc of the moral universe toward justice. We do this because we've inherited through our Unitarian Universalist heritage the freedom to take what we have been taught, to examine it closely for its alignment with our moral compass, Then, if necessary, we must deconstruct those beliefs and doctrines. We reject outmoded beliefs that conflict with our moral conscience, and we rebuild a stronger, more authentic set of beliefs that speak to our heart and conscience. This is the foundation for how we will live love in the world. We can do this because our ancestors, like Theodore Parker, have modeled for us what it means to claim an authentic faith for ourselves, a faith that can be honored within the spectrum of wise teachings from illuminated souls who, through the ages, have come to humanity to help it evolve toward greater love and compassion. And in that spirit, I invite us to rise in body or spirit to share hymn 193, Our Faith is But a Single Gem. Chalice, thank you. As our service draws to a close, we extinguish the flame of our chalice as we share these words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. So let's take a moment to Zoomies, wave goodbye to the Roomies. Roomies, wave goodbye to the Zoomies. It's been wonderful being together. Our final words of blessing come from Theodore Parker. Be ours a religion which like sunshine goes everywhere. Its temple all space, its shrine the good heart, its creed all truth, its ritual works of love, its professions of faith, divine living. Shall we go right into our meeting? Okay, Betty has spoken the truth. If you don't want to stay for